This instruction is going to be about steps for handling a motion. This is specifically for FCCLA, Future Current Community Leaders of America. So if you're listening from that organization, this video is for you. I've been a coach, well, not so much a coach, but an advisor to a few different teams, and also a judge at regional and national parliamentarian procedure. So I'm presenting this instruction as a way to help party teams from across the country be able to compete better, and especially to help coaches who want to serve and help a team get going, but maybe don't know parliamentary procedure as well as you might need to. Now, there are a couple of books that you should keep in mind, and that is Robert's Rules of Order and Robert's Rules of Order in Brief. Now, Robert's Rules of Order is the book that you need if you're going to be a parliamentarian. It's about 750 pages, and it covers every conceivable situation that you might run across. If you're going to be a professional parliamentarian, you need to really know this book well. For your purposes, for FCCLA and for most chairs of meetings, Robert's Rules of Order in Brief is the book for you. It's only about 230 pages, and it follows the 80-20 rule. So it covers the 80% of the situations, the 20% of the situations that are encountered 80% of the time. So all of the main processes and motions that you are going to use in FCCLA competition are covered in Robert's Rules of Order in Brief, and it's a much easier book to read and also is cheaper. If you want to make sure you have the current version, go to my website at parliamentarian.com, and you can order. There's a link there to order. It goes right from Amazon. So you can order directly on my website, and that way you can be sure you've got the most current edition and the right book, Robert's Rules of Order in Brief. At the same website, you can post a general parliamentary question for free on the Ask a Parliamentary Question section of my website. There's also training set up there. Also, you can listen to my podcast, which has a link on the website, or go to Spotify. It's called Party Pod, with a space in the middle. Party, Parli, pod. Well, you can see it right there on the screen. Party Pod, also on Anchor FM. So let's talk about the steps to handling emotion. This is covered in your competition under the rubric for observes or follows proper parliamentary procedure. This is the overall process that you use for handling every motion. The first step, of course, is to make a motion. Then generally there requires a second. Then the chair states the question. Then there is debate if the motion is debatable. Then the chair puts the question, which means put to a vote. Then you take a vote, and then lastly, there's an announcement of the results. Now, every motion must include all of these steps where applicable. So let's go through and look at these in a little bit more detail. First, making a motion, you simply say, I move. You don't say, I motion. You say, I move. I move that we will buy 3 chairs for the office. I move that we postpone this motion to the next meeting. I move the previous question. I move this, I move that. That is how you make a motion. After you are recognized by the chair, in most cases, then you would say, I move, and then state your motion. Now, this really isn't part of the competition, but just so you know, there's a little process where we need to make sure that the motion is clear. And it's the chair's job to make sure that the motion is intelligible and it's not too long and all those kinds of things. That's not really for competition, but just so you know, the chair is allowed to say, I'm a little confused. Are you making a motion to buy chairs for the office or buy chairs for your home or whatever the motion is? The chair can have a short, brief exchange with the maker of the motion in order to make sure the motion is clear for everyone. Then there is a second. Now, for a second, you don't have to be recognized. So to make a motion, you first have to get recognized and request the floor. And you'll do that by saying Madam Chair or Mr. Chair or whatever is customary for your organization, then the chair will call on you and give you the floor and say the member is recognized or Mr. So-and-so is recognized. That means you have the floor and everyone will listen to you speak. You have to do that before making most motions. There are a few exceptions, but for all main motions, you must be recognized. A second does not require recognition. You can, from your seat, just say second or whatever. It doesn't, so as to not waste a lot of time. Now, a second doesn't mean you necessarily even will vote for the motion. It just means you agree that we should discuss it. So it's only a way of making sure that we don't waste time discussing things that only one person wants to talk about. And therefore, once the debate has started, there's no further need for a second. If someone becomes recognized and starts debate, that is in effect a second, because the second just means I want to discuss it. So once the discussion starts, then a second is no longer required. The person who makes the motion goes in the minutes. The name of the person who makes the second doesn't matter. It does not go in the minutes. So that's the function of the second. Then the chair, once the motion has been perfected or clarified and seconded, then states the motion. Now, the motion should always be stated exactly the same way that the mover stated it or as perfected. So stating the question is always like this. It is moved and seconded. That, and then you state the motion. Now you do not say it was moved or it has been moved. It's always it is moved and seconded that we buy 3 chairs for the office. That's the example motion I'm going to use throughout this discussion. So if the motion is long and during your competition, you should really work on having very short motions because first of all, it saves time, and it's too difficult for the chair to restate the motion exactly the same every time if it's too long. So here would be an example of a bad motion for FCCLA competition. I move that during the month of October, in recognition of FCCLA month, that we have a cookie selling bake-off and that we sell the cookies in the cafeteria if allowed by the school, and that we would raise the money and use the money for holding a awards dinner. That would be a terrible motion for a competition. The motion for the competition would be, I move that we have a bake sale in January. Good, perfect. So that's a motion that you can get your head around. The chair should state the motion exactly for stating the motion exactly the way it was moved or as perfected, the way that the person who makes the motion wants it to be stated. And the chair should write it down, and the secretary should write it down so that you can have it correctly reflected in the minutes and have it correctly stated by the chair. So the chair states the motion and simply says, it is moved and seconded that we postpone this motion to the next meeting, or that we buy 3 chairs for the office, or whatever is the motion. That is followed by debate. And to open debate, the chair simply says, are you ready for the question? Which is not as popular, but it is a legal wording provided in Robert's Rules. Or is there any discussion, or is there further discussion? That's the invitation for people to be request the floor, asked to be recognized by saying Mr. Chair or Madam Chair or whatever is customary in your organization, so they can be called on for debate. Now, some things are not debatable, and we will cover that in the discussion of the individual motions. As the team, you should know which motions are debatable and which are not debatable, so that when you make your presentation for the competition, you are all on the same page. You should have, it's almost like presenting a play. You should know what the motions are going to be within good reason. You should have an idea of who's going to speak and who's going to make different various motions, and this is something that you can rehearse and practice in advance. Now, after the debate ends, and the debate can end in several ways. One is if the chair says, is there any further discussion, and no one wants to be recognized, then you're done with debate. You can also end debate by a motion for previous question, which will be discussed in a later section. and that forces an end to debate. But you do not have to have that in every case. Now, once the debate has ended, then the chair must put the question, meaning put the question to a vote. In this step, the chair will again state the motion. Now, it seems like there's lots of repetition, and that is true. But the reason is that the chair's main job is to make sure that everyone knows what's happening at all times. In any meeting, any parliamentary meeting, if anyone in the room is saying, "What are we voting on?" or "What are we discussing?" or "What did we just decide?" the chair is not doing the chair's job. The chair's job is to make sure that everybody knows what's going on all the time. So you don't just say, "Okay, let's vote on that." You always will state the motion again for the vote. That's putting the question to a vote. Why is it called a question? Because every vote that we take is a yes or no answer. We're putting the question. Do you want to buy chairs? Yes or no. Do you want to postpone the meeting? Yes or no. Do you want to have an adjournment? Yes or no. So we're always putting a question to the body or to the assembly. So you should always, as the chair, state the motion again. And it might be something like this. Very well, hearing no further discussion, we'll now move to the vote on the motion of that we will buy 3 office chairs. Now, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Okay. So it should be stated the same way, because the one that's stated when you put the question, that is the form that goes into the minutes. That's the one that people are actually voting on. And if the chair messes up and misstates the question that's going to be voted on at the end, and nobody raises a point of order, which they should do, then that's how it goes in the minutes. And you would have voted on something entirely different than you debated for all that time. Now, if the chair gets a little lost, or maybe it was a long motion, he can always turn to the secretary and say, the secretary will now please read the motion. Because it's the secretary's job, and there's really the only thing the secretary needs to do is to write these motions down, while as the chair has lots of things to keep track of. So the chair should also be making notes at the lectern, but if necessary, the secretary should absolutely have every motion word for word written down, and be prepared for the chair to turn anytime to the secretary to say, "Please read the motion." Now, if the motion has been printed out on paper and passed out to everyone, then you don't need to read it every time, especially if it's long. For example, I'm parliamentarian for a meeting next month, and there's a motion that is 60 pages long. 60 pages. And they asked me, "Do we have to read this whole thing? It'll take an hour." At least an hour. So no, if you print out a copy and you pass it out to everyone, you don't have to read it. You can just say, we will now, it has been moved and seconded that we adopt the resolution that is on the handout titled Special Resolution, which you have all received when you entered the meeting hall. All right, after putting the question, then you will ask for the vote. And normally it's done by voice. In competition, almost everything is done by voice except for the previous question, which is a standing vote. Make sure that you know the difference. So in the vote, it can be majority or 2/3. Most motions are majority. Those motions that you are handling in your competition will mostly be a majority vote. Sometimes a 2/3 vote is required. You can take votes by voice, which is normally what you're going to do, or standing, and that's what you're going to do for the competition, voice or standing. Now, in real life, you can also have a show of hands, or you can have people stand up and be counted, or you can have a ballot. A ballot means a secret vote. That's the meaning of ballot. So you don't need to say a secret ballot. A ballot is always secret. But in competition, you're going to have a voice vote or a standing vote. And I'll talk about that when we talk about the motions in the next section. Now, a division of the assembly is one of the things that you have the option of demonstrating. If after a voice vote, we want to have a division, that simply means have a standing vote. It does not mean a counted vote. When you call for a division, or someone else, anyone in the group can call for a division, anyone in the assembly, and then you have a standing vote. Now, the reason for this is discussed in the next section about a division of the assembly. Now, if in a large meeting you weren't able to really identify the effect of the vote, like you're not really sure if it passed or not, then you could verify the vote, but you never do it the same way. So you never retake a vote the same way. So if you have a voice vote and you're not sure which was yeas or nays, you don't have a voice vote again. You have a division or a standing vote. If you have a standing vote and you're not quite sure, then you have a counted vote. So you keep going up the ladder. Now, if there's a tie, the tie goes to the runner. So a tie means that the motion is lost, because you have to have a majority to adopt something. If you don't have a majority, it doesn't matter whether you're one short of a majority or 100 short of a majority, it's lost. So you don't revote, you accept that as a loss. When a vote is lost, it simply means that no decision was made. So it is not true that if everybody votes against something that they want the opposite. So for example, if we have a vote on the motion to buy 3 office chairs and the motion is lost, that doesn't mean that we can't buy 3 office chairs. It just means that we haven't agreed to. So somebody else could say, well, I'm going to buy 3 blue office chairs. Maybe everyone likes that. It's perfectly fine. But we can't then say later on at the next meeting, well, we already voted not to have office chairs. That's not true. We simply did not adopt the motion to buy the office chairs at that time. Now, lastly is the announcement of the result, and no vote is completed until the chair announces the result. And this is part of the idea that everyone is equally, there's equal visibility to everyone. So everyone can hear the vote, the yeas or nays, when you're calling for a vote, and so that's why anyone can call for division. If the chair announces that the ayes have it, and anyone feels like the ayes don't have it because they all heard the vote as well, then they can ask for division. That's why we have that division rule. The chair is the facilitator of the meeting, not the dictator of the meeting. The meeting belongs to the assembly. So if anybody feels like the chair got it wrong, they can ask for a vote. Now, the chair needs to let everybody know what is going on. And that's why we have the announcement of the result. So the chair says his opinion of what the result of the vote was. So the ayes have it, or the noes have it, or there were 16 ayes and 12 noes. Whatever is the result, the chair will announce that. And then everyone will say, oh, yeah, okay, I agree. In their mind, they don't say that out loud. Then the chair will say the results of the vote, which is the motion is adopted or the motion is lost. Now, the reason why this is important is because the chair may get confused and think that it's supposed to be a majority vote, and he says, well, the ayes are in favor and the motion is adopted, and then somebody may say, no, it's supposed to be a 2/3 vote, right? A point of order. So you always say whether the motion is adopted or lost. It's not adopted or defeated, or it's not win or lose, or it's not passed or unpassed. The correct terminology is adopted or lost. And then lastly, the chair will say what will happen. So if we just voted to buy the office chairs, then the announcement might be this way. Listen for the 3 different parts. The ayes have it, the motion is adopted, and we will direct the officers to purchase the office chairs. Or let's say you had a motion to postpone a motion to the next meeting. Okay, again, listen for the 3 parts. The noes have it, the motion is lost, and we will continue to discuss the current motion on the table, which is to purchase 3 office chairs. Okay, so the chair always helps us know, okay, what's the next thing to do? What's the effect? If that motion to postpone was adopted, then the announcement would be the ayes have it, the motion to postpone is adopted, and we will move this motion and all of its subsidiary motions to the next meeting. Okay. See, it's important that everything is clear. Everything has to be made clear. Now, there is one more step that can be put in, and that is the chair can vote if, well, first of all, if it's a part of a small committee, and in most cases in your competition, I don't know whatever you decide, you can probably have the chair vote, although it isn't important. It's not important part of the demonstration. Probably it's just more simple if the chair doesn't vote, and then you don't have to explain it. But in small committees, the chair can vote, the chair can debate, the chair can do whatever the chair wants to do. In large meetings, the chair doesn't vote unless it will change the announcement. And so the chair can, I'm not change the announcement, change the outcome. You can change the outcome by breaking a tie or by making a tie, because remember, a tie motion is lost, or by making a 2/3 or by breaking a 2/3. So some people have the idea that the chair only votes to break a tie. That's not true. The chair votes anytime that it will make a difference, or if by ballot. If the vote is secret, the chair can vote just like anyone else. So for the purposes of your demonstration, however, you're not going to do this. I just wanted to make you aware of it, that if the chair is going to vote, this is when it would be done. So the chair would say, there are 15 noes and 14, or there are 14 yeas and 14 noes, and the chair votes yes, or the chair votes aye, and the motion is adopted. That's where the chair would give their vote. Again, this is just so you can learn. This is not about the competition, so forget about that part during the competition. In the competition, you don't have a parliamentarian, but if you ever do, the chair, the parliamentarian, never votes, even if they're a member of the society. All right. And of course, the exception is ballot votes. Both the chair and the parliamentarian can vote in ballot votes because they are secret. Now let's have a short quiz. Put these in correct order. These are the steps for handling a motion. And look at these for a minute and put them in order. Pause the recording if you need to. All right, so let's review. First, you have to make the motion. That makes perfect sense, right? Because nothing starts without making the motion. Then someone needs to second it in most cases. That means that we are okay to discuss it. Then the chair will state the question so it can go to the floor for discussion. Then there's the discussion, the debate. Then when the debate is over, then we put the question, which means to put the question to a vote, which of course means you have to vote. And then after the vote, you have to announce the results, right? Okay. Now, I haven't really covered this, but I'm just curious if you know, when is a 2/3 vote required? Think about that for just a second. When is a 2/3 vote required? Well, it's whenever the majority is going to limit the rights of the minority, such as ending debate. I'll describe this more in the next section on previous question. When you end debate, it requires a 2/3 vote. That's about the only thing in your competition, that's the only motion in your competition that requires a 2/3 vote. Also for setting limits of debate. Again, you don't have to show this or demonstrate this in your competition. But anytime you're limiting or changing the limits on debate, that's always a 2/3 vote because it impacts people's rights to vote. All right. Now, next quiz question. In the announcement of the vote, what is missing below? So, report of the vote, statement indicating the effect of the vote. What is missing from the announcement of the vote from this screen? Now, think about that for a second if you need to pause the recording. All right, here comes the answer. First, you report the vote, the ayes, which is the ayes have it, or there's 14 in favor and 3 opposed if it's a counted vote, something like that. But you give what is the result of the voting. Then the effect on the motion. Is it adopted or lost? And then lastly, a statement indicating the effect of the vote. So an example is, the ayes have it and the motion is adopted, and we will do whatever the main motion calls for us to do. So, well, that concludes this section on handling a motion. This is really the overall parliamentary process, parliamentary procedure. You will be judged and graded based upon your ability to follow all the steps of handling a motion correctly. If you have any questions, you can email me at kirby@parliamentarian.com or go to my website and post a question under Ask a Parliamentary Question at parliamentarian.com. Thanks. Good luck in your competition. This also is followed by two more videos, one on subsidiary motions and the other one on incidental and privileged motions. So be sure and take a look at those.